Today we are here again. We are going to talk about soil sampling procedure, how to take a soil sample in preparation for analysis, and how you interpret the results after your sample has been analyzed. So the process of soil sampling, you first establish a soil sampling plan. A soil sampling plan, we are simply saying you go into your field, look at what you see as the similarities on the soil and soil characteristics, and then you group your land or your portion of area based on land that have got similar characteristics, which we call homogeneous land areas or homogeneous portions. And then when you have the homogeneous portions, which are portions that have got the same characteristics on your piece of land, you treat those as sampling areas or sampling units. So you have to take samples from each area that has similar characteristics. So after dividing your land, you then go into the process of taking the actual sample for analysis. The process of taking a soil sample for analysis, you first of all remove the litter on the surface of the area that you are working on. You don't have to take including the litter on the surface. So you scrape off the litter. After scraping off the litter, you dig a 15 centimeter deep hole, which is almost V-shaped in terms of size. So if you are using a hole, you dig that pit that is 15 centimeters deep. If you are using an auger, it's easier because you just remove the litter and then you draw your auger down to 15 centimeters. It's calibrated and it's measured, standardized to 15 centimeters. And so mainly farmers will be using their holes for taking their samples. So after you have dug a hole that is 15 centimeters, you remove the soil that is in the hole and leave it empty. After you have left the hole empty, you then scrape off from the top to the bottom on the sideways of your hole. You scrape from the top to the bottom, and the soil will be falling into the pit that you have opened on that hole. And then you collect the soil that is accumulated in the hole. That's the soil that you use for sampling. So you repeat this process over and over on a portion of land. So when you are taking a sample, you don't take a sample from one position. On your field, there are different methods that you need to apply for taking a soil sample. One of the methods is zigzag. One of the methods is a Z-shaped, or it can be an L-shaped. The Z-shaped, you are simply saying within a soil sampling area that is the same homogeneous characteristics, you go on that and cover the area with a representative way of, you formulate a representative way of covering the whole area, which can be a zigzag or a Z or an L, depending on the size of the land. So these different methods of taking a soil sample, we are simply looking at having a representative sample of the whole farm or of the whole area that have got the similar land characteristics or soil characteristics, so that your sample is as good as your results that you get from the analysis. So if you don't take a good sample, your results will not be good enough as well. So the different methods of sampling that we have discussed, which is the zigzag, the L, the W, or the haphazard, they have their own advantage and disadvantage. If we are to look at the disadvantages and advantages of each, you note that the L is very simple, but it doesn't give a true representation of the whole farm. The sample that you get from there, it's not very representative of the area, but it's simple and you can easily get away with taking a sample. The same applies with the W. The W is you are moving towards being getting a representative sample, but it's an easy way of doing it, where you move across your area in W-shaped movements, which automatically crops up to zigzag if you repeatedly do that on a portion of land. So if it's zigzag, it has to be in different directions across the farm or the area from where you are taking a sample, which is from one direction to the other, or a diagonal at diagonal points on the portion of land. That's how you take a sample. But zigzag, it becomes more effective if you repeatedly do it across the diagonally across your field. You get a representative of your sample. So each and every way of taking a sample has its own disadvantage and advantage. And looking at the haphazard is not the best, because it leaves a lot of bias with someone going to take a sample where he or she thinks it's a fertile point and it needs to be analyzed. How you are guided to that particular sample is also has got some bias. So the most encouraged way of taking a sample is through a zigzag, which you do across your field in different directions, diagonal across your field. That's one of the best ways where you can get your samples being representative of your soil for analysis. One of the key characteristics that you look at when you are doing your sampling plan is to look at the soil physical characteristics, such as soil color and soil texture. So as you are moving across your field, if you see changes in soil color and soil texture, it's an indication that those portions has to be treated separately, and you can take different samples. But it also depends on the scale of the difference. If the difference is not very significant, you can consider the plot as one. But if you have a color change that stretches over a period, that stretches over a lengthy portion of land, you treat that as two separate samples. But as you do your sampling, if you come across things like NTUs, like dwellers, like NTU dwellers and some stones, those are things that should not limit you in terms of soil sampling, but you have to avoid. If your sampling position is only an NTU, you have to avoid that sampling position, unless if the whole field is an NTU.
So there are several methods which are in use, including the zigzag method, W method, the perimeter method, but we are going to be focusing on two types of soil sampling. When we are doing soil sampling, we collect soil given 1 meter from where the field ends. Then you choose your points using the zigzag method or the W point. Normally on the zigzag method, we sample 3 points per line. Then on the W method, we sample 6 points per line. Normally for the field which has got homogeneous soil, we normally apply the W method. But when there are like several points which are different in the field, a zigzag method will be more appropriate. When we are taking these samples, we don't take where there is manure, we don't take a place where water logs, and we also don't take where there is termites use.
When taking your soil sample, after removing litter from the soil surface, you dig a pit that is 15 centimeters deep. 15 centimeters deep, we are simply referring to the sampling depth. That's the depth at which we sample with the consideration of the roots of the plants that we plant. So you dig 15 centimeters with a hoe, and you empty the hole that you'd have created, and then you slice from the top of the pit to the bottom, the soil collecting in the hole that you have opened. And then you collect that hole, you go on another sampling position, you do the same process as you move along with your zigzag sampling method, collecting samples from each position, moving along the zigzag pattern, mixing the samples together. You mix all of these samples together and you have a homogeneous sample, from where you then take at least 100 grams a maximum, and that's your sample, which is representative of your area for analysis. After collecting your soil sample, it is very important to understand how you package your soil sample for analysis, because some of the processes that are engaged in the lab during analysis would need the soil to be alive. For example, we talked about soil being a living organism, being a living body. It's very critical that we maintain some of the organisms living. So the soil doesn't have to be contaminated. You don't have to pack your soil for analysis in containers that previously contained other materials such as fertilizers or chemicals. Your container that you put your soil sample has to be clean, and it has to be paper, not plastic. Avoid using plastic, because plastic, in its sense, if you close it up, it suffocates some of the living organisms that would need to be analyzed when we are analyzing for microbial biomass in the soil. So have your sample collected and packed in a paper bag, not a plastic bag, in preparation for soil sample. And ensure your sample is labeled with all the information, including the crops that were planted on the land and the ones that you also intend to plant, so that the agronomist can be advised on the best way to recommend based on what you would want to use the soil for. So after collecting your sample, please make sure that your sample reaches the soil analysis lab within a period of at least 1 month. And if you are preparing to send it for analysis after a period of time, please make sure you dry your sample. The process of drying a sample is you take it on a plain piece of paper, you spread it on a plain piece of paper on the shade and allow it to drain excess moisture, and then pack it after draining excess moisture. And also avoid taking soil samples from moist portions of land. If that happens, then you have to dry your sample before sending it for analysis. If you take a sample and have it kept for more than 1 month, the analysis of that sample will be compromised. It's better off you take another sample and use that one for analysis, rather than keeping it for more than 1 month before it gets analyzed. It compromises the results of the analysis. So when is the best time to take a soil sample? That's one of the critical questions to farmers. Is it soon after harvest or just before planting? So the critical point to understand from that is soil sampling and soil analysis is being done to inform how you are going to implement your soil management practices. So if you take your sample in just before planting, you don't have much time to prepare your soil and improve your soil health before the coming in of the plant. But it's very much encouraged that soil sampling and soil analysis is done during the fallow period, when you have just removed your crop, when you are planning on which crops to plant next, you do your soil sampling. So ordinarily here in Zimbabwe, we are simply saying soon after harvest, in the period of around May, June, July, you'll be running your analysis and analyzing your soil, maybe up to around August, and give your soil time to correct the soil fertility management aspects before the planting season. You can actually do it during the planting season, but your input into the correction will be very limited since soil management practices take longer time to respond than just quick action. Unless if you are only focusing on nutrients, which you can provide right away. But when you talk about soil health, we are looking at the capacity of the soil to support itself, which cannot be ensured overnight. It's a process because you are following natural processes.
Right, so when you are also taking the sample for analysis, it is also important to analyze even for the sediments which are in that particular soil sample. And also in this mobile van, for different farmers in communities, we can also analyze for water quality. For example, it might be water for fish. When a farmer is into fish farming, we can analyze it for water quality. And also if the water is for irrigation purposes, we can also analyze that and give the farmers the results.
There are 4 things which you don't have to do when you are doing soil sampling. Number 1, don't take where there is manure. Number 2, don't take where water logs. Number 3, don't take where there is underhill. Number 4, don't use contaminated containers. Then when you are doing soil sampling, make sure that you have a good wall, and that wall you have to pull out the first soil which you dig, and it must be at an angle of between 20 and 30 degrees, and you slice 3 times, mix that soil in the wall, then you take a sample into the bucket. You do that for the 3 points each line on the zigzag method. Then you also do the same if you are using the WO method. After doing that on all your sampling points, you mix the soil in the bucket and you put it in a sample bag. Then it is labeled. That sample will be ready. Kana tapedza ivhu redu tarisa mune bucket, tinorizanganisa zvakanaka. Kana razangana, toisa mupepa rebepa chairo risiri plastic, nokuti plastic inouraya zvinogara muvhu, uye plastic rinokanganisa moisture content yeivhu. In another words, we are saying after mixing thoroughly, you have to take this a representative sample into a paper bag, not plastic paper. Then you label it. The reason is that we don't want our microorganisms to be killed or to increase the moisture content of the soil. After receiving our representative sample from the field, it has to go through sieve analysis and with a 2 mm sieve. Then we get this fine sample which we will use for our analysis. So we take 10 grams, then we put calcium chloride solution, then we can shake it to check for pH. Then we also do the conductivity test with the 10 with the same size of spatula, 10 mil, and with the sweet water, and check for conductivity. Then we also do various tests whereby we will take this 10 mil and we will extract with the several different type of tablets. Like for example, we have calcium, we can test with for iron, we can test for potash, for nitrogen. Then this photometer will give us the results which we will then communicate. So what we do is that after we have finished our analysis for the pH, conductivity, NPK and other necessary elements depending on the shortages which are being experienced by the farmer, we then give the results to the agronomist, for interpretation. But as an organization which is based on agroecological principles, we normally recommend in terms of biofertilizers, which are the bokashi, pit compost, and other types of the compost like the vermi compost. Then for the top dressing, we normally recommend in terms of liquid manure. That is, we can use chicken manure, we can use pig manure, cow dung, which you can ferment. So one of the things which we have been experiencing is that the quality of the soils is decreasing due to poor pH. Normally acidic soils are experienced in many areas in Zimbabwe. Low pH, they make our plants healthy deteriorate because some of the nutrients cannot be available to the plants. So we need an optimal pH. We normally prefer pH of 6.5 to 7.5. So liming requirement is one of the measures which calls pH, but you'd find that by using the bio fertilizers, with time the pH of the soils improves. At the same time, it also adds to the nutrition component of the soil. So we are saying that in most cases, farmers, they are using fertilizers in the areas where the soils are already bad, and because of that, they normally produce poor yields. So soil testing is one of the parameters which are very essential in terms of farming, so that you can have yield crops and good yields. So we are saying that as farmers and I operating this mobile lab and our conventional lab, we want to contribute to food security in Zimbabwe through soil testing, by making sure that farmers, they know the state of their soils, so that they can be able to put mitigating measures before they do the planting. You will find that one of the main principles of farming is soil testing before planting for the next season. And the soil testing is normally done after harvesting and also before the rains. Most of the literature available, and also from what we've experienced in the field, is that we need to do soil testing soon after harvesting, because potash is affected if you spend a long time after harvest to have a correct result. So the correct results, you normally find it during after harvesting, to find out how much potash is available in the soils. Then you can be able to determine what is the difference between the required and the current state of the soil. But we are saying that biofertilizers, one of the biggest beneficiaries they have put in the soil is the increase in the microbiological content of the soil. Microbiological organisms play a pivotal role in the life cycle of the plant, because they help to unlock nutrients in the soil, thereby making them available to the plant. So you would find that in terms of nitrogen, in terms of phosphorus and potassium and other trace elements, there is what we call available, which is accessible to the plants. And there is also total phosphorus or total nitrogen or total potash, which includes the part of the element but which is not available to the plant. So we are saying that correct pH is required for the survival of the microorganism in the soil.